Oh, hi there. Yes, we've been here before because I'm the person who compared Goodreads to the StoryGraph, and I'm also the person who told you how to export your Goodreads books into the StoryGraph. But I'm also the person who hasn't exactly kept up with both platforms or made the switch completely to the StoryGraph. So today we're going to fix that. I'm going to get rid of all my The StoryGraph books and start from scratch by exporting my very up-to-date Goodreads books and importing them back into the StoryGraph. While we're there, we may as well take a look at some of the cool new features they released since I last talked about it. This is my vow to you. I will keep up with both platforms, and by the end of the year I'll have enough experience in both where I'll do another comparisons video. Okay, let's get to it. So first things first, let's take a look at my The StoryGraph account. It still says I'm reading The Wicked King, which according to Goodreads, I actually finished in March of 2022. Considering it's now January 2024, that's kind of embarrassing. Which meant that around March 2022 was the last time I updated the StoryGraph. The StoryGraph says that I've read 278 books, which comparing that to Goodreads says that I've read 390. So I've made quite a lot of progress since I've not been on the StoryGraph. So here's what I need to do to make sure my The StoryGraph account has the exact same setup as my Goodreads account. I need to delete everything from my The StoryGraph account. This means books, tags, lists, you name it. This is because when importing to the StoryGraph, it won't understand that you already have certain books. It will just duplicate them. In other words, doing multiple imports is a no-go. Then I'll need to export all my Goodreads books and import them into the StoryGraph. And lastly, we'll need to check over everything to make sure it's working correctly and make some adjustments if we need to. First things first, it's time to delete 278 books, 32 to-read books, and 4 tags. I feel like there should be a way to do this in bulk, and if there is and I just don't know what it is, I'm going to be so upset. I thought I would check my account settings, and you can there are just buttons. You can delete everything. So to get to this, you just go to your profile image, click manage account, scroll down, and you'll get to manage your data. And in that section, you can delete your to-read pile, delete your owned books, and delete your books, reviews, and tags. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, that took a couple of minutes comparatively with me doing it manually, so I'm quite pleased about that. So now that the StoryGraph account is essentially a blank slate, we can export the books from Goodreads and import them into the StoryGraph. So we'll do that now. To get to the export section of your Goodreads account, just go to your profile, scroll down to your bookshelf section and click on more ... While here, you'll see all your books and everything, but on the left-hand side, there's a little sidebar. Scroll down till you get to the tools section and click import and export. It's not exactly easy to find. Once here, click the export library button and it will generate a file that you can then save to your computer. That probably took about a minute for the size of my library, so you can compare that to what size of library that you have. It doesn't take that long. Now we're going to click this link that's below the export library button, and this is our file that will download onto our computer. Okay, now we're going to import this into the StoryGraph. To do this, click on your profile image at the top on the StoryGraph and click Manage Account. Then scroll down the page until you get to Goodreads Import and click the Import Goodreads Library button. This will take you to the page which give you step-by-step instructions on how to import it. But we're just going to go straight down to the bottom and we're going to click Choose File and add in our file that we just downloaded onto our computer. Next, we're going to click the Import My Goodreads Library button. This import process will have steps that you can follow to make sure that your import kind of matches up with the StoryGraph's features with the Goodreads features that you were using. So the first one is about my owned books and whether I have a shelf for that, which I do. I have physical TBR, so I'm gonna add that. Okay, and now that's done, it says that they've received my data, but because it's January and a lot of people are joining the StoryGraph, it says that it could take up to 72 hours to do the import. So we'll have to come back another day and finish this and tidy up everything and make sure everything's working correctly. So we'll see you then. Okay, it's over a week later and all my books have been added to the StoryGraph. Now, it didn't actually take over a week, it took under the 72 hours they said it would, but I had to wait another week until I could film this video, so let's take a look at what my StoryGraph looks like now. So because it's been about a week since my books have been uploaded, I've already been keeping up to date with both platforms. So what I'm currently reading has changed because I finished a book. But what we need to do now is just make sure that all our tags and shelves are all correct and lined up with Goodreads. So all of our tags have been uploaded into the StoryGraph and everything looks exactly as I have it in Goodreads, which is amazing. And as an added bonus, instead of just my physical TBR tag, I also have a specific section on the StoryGraph which is for my owned books, which is quite useful. So one of the really fun things that we can do now is look at our stats from the years that we have missed inputting into the StoryGraph, because essentially all you have from Goodreads is data and that just transfers into the StoryGraph, so you can have a lifetime's worth of stats to look at. Not only is this really fun to look at, I think it's pretty useful for seeing the type of books that you like to read. For example, if you like more medium-paced books, like I do, apparently, then you can look on the StoryGraph and see which books are that kind of pacing, and you can filter by that too. The part that I find the most useful though for finding new books is the moods section. This will basically tell you the kind of vibe you like in a book. So for me, I personally apparently like adventurous books that are quite dark, emotional, informative, reflective, and mysterious, which probably adds up, especially if you account for all the mythology and the gothic fiction that I like. Those kind of mix in with that. So now that that's all set up, let's take a look at some of the features that have been added since the last time that I used the StoryGraph. One of the things that always bothered me about the StoryGraph was the quality of the recommendations that they had. So they've just recently done an update on this, so let's see if that's improved. Well, I would say based on my recommendations that it definitely has improved, which is good because previously I would not even pick up any of the recommendations that they've given me. But apparently you can customize this even further with this survey that you can fill out, and it will give you recommendations based on that. So let's look at our recommendations based on the survey, and then we'll take a look at what my survey actually says, and we can customize that. So it looks like they're giving me a lot of Greek myths, but it seems to be more classic myths rather than retellings. So let's take a look at the actual survey. Okay, so here is my reading preferences survey, and it looks like I've said that my favorite genres are dystopian, fantasy, and young adult, and I like to read Greek mythology books. You can see some of my other selections, but it seems like it's really gone hard on the Greek mythology angle, but ignored the rest for the most part. So I think that could be improved. But they have added this new section, which is content to avoid. So things that you don't want to see, which is pretty good. Something to bear in mind is that your recommendations will likely always be better or more accurate if you upgrade to Plus. Another really cool feature that they've added is read-alongs. Essentially, it allows you to set up a read-along for up to 1,000 people. You can set up forums for specific parts of the book and keep people in those sections until they read to certain pages. This way you avoid spoilers. I do a similar thing in my Discord server for read-alongs, but using the StoryGraph allows you to have a little more control. As well as setting reading goals in the StoryGraph, you can now create reading streaks. Basically mini goals that you can track over time, which I think is pretty cool. Although I probably won't use it personally, I can see how it would be a really good tool if you're aiming to get more reading done this year. Then there's the giveaways. It's going to sound weird, but it has always annoyed me that Goodreads giveaways are never international. The StoryGraph has made international giveaways possible. That seems to be it for new features. But compared to the new features Goodreads have put out, zero, it's night and day. Plus, the StoryGraph shares their roadmap and you can request features you'd like to see if you upgrade. Goodreads does this too, kind of, but it's very hard to find. I'll post a link in the description of this video if you want to add to it. Honestly, I'm quite excited about my future on the StoryGraph. I'm going to keep adding to both platforms, but it's going to give me access to a bunch of new features that I wouldn't have had before. As I said, I want to give both a go for a full year to see how we go, and then I can put together a comparison video at the end of the year and see if I want to switch fully to the StoryGraph or not. For now, let me know if you've made the switch to the StoryGraph or if you're considering using both, or if you prefer one platform over the other. Let's discuss in the comments. And I will see you next time.